This 2026 cruiser might shock Harley fans. The truth about the Suzuki Boulevard C90T. What if everything you thought you knew about cruiser motorcycles was about to be flipped upside down? The 2026 Suzuki Boulevard C90T isn't just another update, it's a statement. A bold, unapologetic machine that dares to challenge the giants of the cruiser world. Riders who once swore loyalty to traditional American iron are starting to take a second look, and for good reason. This bike blends classic touring DNA with modern refinement in a way that feels almost unfair at its price point. The moment you lay eyes on it, there's an undeniable presence, low-slung, stretched out, and dripping with chrome confidence. But looks can be deceiving. Beneath that vintage-inspired exterior lies a surprisingly modern riding experience that feels smoother, more refined, and more accessible than many of its rivals. The real question is, why is no one talking about it louder? Is this the hidden gem of 2026, or is there something the industry doesn't want you to notice? Stick around, because what we're about to uncover might just change the way you see cruiser motorcycles forever. At first glance, the design of the 2026 Suzuki Boulevard C90T feels like a love letter to old-school touring culture. Massive fenders, studded leather saddlebags, and a commanding windshield give it that unmistakable long-haul identity. But here's the twist. This isn't just nostalgia for nostalgia's sake. Every element has been subtly refined for real-world usability. The ergonomics are dialed in for comfort, not just style, which means you can actually spend hours in the saddle without feeling like your spine is negotiating a surrender. The wide handlebars and relaxed foot positioning create a riding triangle that feels natural, even for newer riders stepping into the cruiser category. Yet, despite its approachable nature, the bike never loses its imposing stance. It still commands respect at every stoplight. And that's where the intrigue deepens. How did Suzuki manage to make something that looks this big, feels so unintimidating? It's almost like they've cracked a formula others have been chasing for decades, and that's only the beginning of what makes this machine so unexpectedly compelling. Let's talk about the heart of the beast, because this is where things get seriously interesting. The 2026 Suzuki Boulevard C90T is powered by a massive V-twin engine that delivers that deep, satisfying rumble cruiser fans crave. But unlike some of its competitors, this engine isn't just about noise, it's about balance. The torque delivery is smooth, predictable, and incredibly usable across a wide range of speeds. That means whether you're cruising through city traffic or stretching out on the highway, the bike responds with confidence instead of aggression. And here's the surprising part. It doesn't feel overwhelming. For a bike of this size, the power is remarkably manageable, making it far more approachable than you might expect. It's the kind of performance that builds trust instead of intimidation. You twist the throttle, and instead of chaos, you get control. And in a segment where brute force often overshadows finesse, that's a game-changing difference. It raises an important question. Are riders finally starting to value refinement over raw power? If so, Suzuki might be way ahead of the curve. Comfort is where the 2026 Suzuki Boulevard C90T quietly dominates the conversation. While other cruisers focus heavily on aesthetics or brand prestige, this bike seems to prioritize the rider's actual experience. The seat is wide, deeply cushioned, and designed for endurance rather than short bursts of style. You don't just sit on it, you settle into it. Combine that with the upright riding posture and wind protection from the large windshield, and you've got a setup that feels tailor-made for long-distance touring. But what really stands out is how effortlessly it absorbs road imperfections. Bumps, cracks, uneven surfaces, things that usually remind you you're riding a heavy cruiser, are noticeably softened. It almost feels like the bike is working with you instead of against you. And that's a rare sensation in this category. It makes you wonder why more manufacturers haven't focused on this level of rider comfort. Could it be that they've been prioritizing image over substance? If that's the case, Suzuki's approach might just be the wake-up call the industry didn't know it needed. Now, here's where things take an unexpected turn: the value proposition. The 2026 Suzuki Boulevard C90T isn't just competing on performance or comfort, it's quietly undercutting much of its competition in terms of overall value. And that's the part that has some riders raising eyebrows. Because when you look at what you're getting, touring-ready features, a proven engine platform, and a refined ride experience, it starts to feel like you're getting more than you paid for. That's not something you hear often in the cruiser world, where brand loyalty can sometimes drive prices far beyond practical justification. This bike challenges that norm in a big way. It forces potential buyers to ask themselves a tough question: are you paying for performance, or are you paying for a badge? And once that question enters your mind, it's hard to ignore. Suddenly, the entire market looks a little different. And Suzuki, often seen as the quiet contender, starts to look like a very serious threat. Handling a large cruiser has always been a concern for many riders, especially those stepping up from smaller bikes. But the 2026 Suzuki Boulevard C90T seems to defy expectations in this area. Despite its size and weight, it feels surprisingly balanced at low speeds. That's a big deal, because maneuverability in parking lots or tight city spaces can make or break the ownership experience. The bike's center of gravity is low, which helps it stay composed even when you're moving slowly, and once you're on the open road, it becomes even more impressive. The stability is rock solid, giving you the confidence to lean into gentle curves without hesitation. It's not a sport bike, of course, but it doesn't feel like a lumbering giant either. Instead, it occupies this sweet spot where size meets control. And that's something many cruisers struggle to achieve. It makes you wonder if this is the future of the segment, a shift toward bikes that are big in presence but approachable in practice. If so, Suzuki might be setting a new standard. Another detail that often gets overlooked is how user-friendly the 2026 Suzuki Boulevard C90T really is. This isn't a bike that demands years of experience to enjoy. In fact, it feels like it was designed to welcome riders into the touring world, rather than intimidate them. The controls are intuitive, the clutch engagement is smooth, and the throttle response is predictable. These might sound like small things, but together they create a riding experience that feels effortless. And that's incredibly important, especially for riders who want to focus on the journey rather than constantly managing the machine. It's almost as if Suzuki asked a simple question: what would make this bike easier to live with every day? And then they built the answer. That kind of design philosophy doesn't always get the spotlight, but it makes a huge difference over time. Because at the end of the day, the best motorcycle isn't just the one that looks good. It's the one you actually want to ride again and again. Touring capability is where the 2026 Suzuki Boulevard C90T truly flexes its muscles. This isn't a bike that needs aftermarket upgrades to feel complete. It comes ready for the road straight from the factory. The saddlebags are spacious enough for real travel, not just short trips, and the windshield provides meaningful wind protection instead of just visual appeal. That means you can hit the highway with confidence, knowing the bike is built for the journey ahead. And yet, it doesn't feel overly bulky or specialized. It still maintains a sense of versatility that allows it to function as an everyday cruiser. That balance between touring readiness and daily usability is incredibly hard to achieve, but Suzuki seems to have nailed it. It raises an interesting point. Why do so many bikes force riders to choose between comfort and practicality? Here, you don't have to. And once you experience that kind of freedom, it's hard to go back. There's also something to be said about reliability, and this is where the 2026 Suzuki Boulevard C90T quietly builds its strongest case. Suzuki has a long-standing reputation for producing durable, low-maintenance machines, and this bike continues that tradition. It's not flashy in this department. It doesn't need to be. Instead, it delivers a sense of dependability that gives riders peace of mind. And in the world of long-distance touring, that's priceless. The last thing you want is to worry about mechanical issues when you're miles away from home. This bike feels like it was built with that reality in mind. It's the kind of machine you trust, not just admire. And that trust changes everything. Because when you're confident in your bike, you're more willing to explore, to take longer trips, to push your boundaries. And isn't that what motorcycling is really about? So here's the big question. Is the 2026 Suzuki Boulevard C90T the most underrated cruiser of the year? All signs seem to point in that direction. It combines classic styling, modern comfort, accessible performance, and strong value in a way that feels almost too good to ignore. And yet, it doesn't always get the attention it deserves. Maybe it's because it doesn't rely on hype. Maybe it's because it lets the experience speak for itself. But for riders who are willing to look beyond the usual names, this bike offers something genuinely special. It challenges assumptions, breaks expectations, and quietly redefines what a cruiser can be. And that's exactly why it deserves your attention. Because sometimes, the biggest surprises come from the places you least expect. And this might just be one of them.